Captain Day One stood at the back of the briefing room and watched the alien commanders argue. The room was massive, built for species much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched 30 feet above his head. Everything here was designed to make humans feel small. Commander Thexral dominated the center of the room. He was Krathari, standing over 8 feet tall with a hard shell that gleamed under the lights. His forearms moved constantly as he spoke, pointing at the holographic display that showed their target. Planet Kethris 7. A Vreath fortress world that had stopped 3 coalition assaults already. "We will strike at dawn," Thexral said. His voice was deep and rumbling. 50,000 warriors will hit the main gates. The Vreath will break before our strength. Daywan had heard this plan before. 3 times before. Actually, each time, it had failed. He raised his hand. Thexral's eyes turned toward him. They were black and cold. "Yes. Human? Commander. Our reconnaissance shows the main gates are heavily defended. But there's a geothermal network underneath the fortress. If we could access it through the lava tubes to the south." "Lava tubes?" A Herxian general laughed. He was massive, with 4 arms and gray skin like stone. "Those passages are barely wide enough for a child. No real warrior could fight there." "Exactly," Day One said. "That's why they won't expect." "Enough." Thexral cut him off with one sharp word. "Humans do not understand real warfare. You have been in space for less than a century. My people have fought for 10,000 years. We know how to break a fortress." Day One felt Lieutenant Hana shift beside him. She was angry. He could tell by the way her jaw tightened. But she stayed quiet. They both did. "The human company will guard the supply lines." Thexral continued. "You will remain in orbit and protect our logistics. That is appropriate work for your species." The other alien commanders made sounds of agreement. Some of them were amused. Day One could see it in their faces, in the way they looked at him and his soldiers. They saw humans as weak, small bodies, thin bones, no natural armor or claws or strength. The briefing ended. The alien commanders filed out, still talking among themselves. None of them looked at the humans. Day One walked back to the human section of the base with his team. Lieutenant Hana walked on his left. Sergeant Taemin was on his right. Private Yunji followed behind, her fingers already moving across her data pad. "They're going to die," Hana said quietly. "That fortress will slaughter them." "Yes," Day One agreed. "And they won't listen to us." "No," Taemin spat on the floor. "Arrogant bastards. They think because they're bigger, they're better." Day One had served 20 years in the military. 10 of those were in the corporate wars back on Earth, fighting in tunnels under the megacities. He'd learned something important in those dark places. Size didn't matter. Strength didn't matter. What mattered was knowing the ground, understanding your enemy, and being willing to do what others wouldn't. The aliens didn't understand this. They'd never had to. Their wars were clean. They lined up their armies and smashed them together. The stronger side won. That's how it had always been for them. But humans had learned warfare in a different school. Earth was a cruel teacher. Back in the human quarters, Day One gathered his officers. There were only 5 of them. Captain Day One commanded the company. Lieutenant Hana led the weapons teams. Sergeant Tae-min handled the combat squads. Corporal Jae-ho ran reconnaissance. Private Un-ji was their communications specialist and, unofficially, their hacker. "Show me the geological surveys again," Day One said. Un-ji pulled up the data. The fortress sat on top of an active volcanic region. Heat from below powered everything. Shields, weapons, life support. All of it ran on geothermal energy pulled from the planet's core. "The lava tubes run right under the fortress," Day One said, tracing the map with his finger. "Here, here, and here. They're narrow, hot, dangerous, perfect for us," Taemin said with a grim smile. "The aliens will never use them," Hana added. "They're too big, And they're too proud to crawl through tunnels like rats. Daewon nodded. But we're not too proud. And we're exactly the right size. And, Jae-ho leaned forward. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking, sir? I'm thinking that in about 6 hours, Thexrel is going to march 50,000 soldiers into a meat grinder. I'm thinking that Fortress is going to tear them apart. And I'm thinking that when the coalition is desperate enough, they might finally listen to us. Or they might not, Hana said. Or they might not, Daewon agreed. Which is why we need to be ready. Eunji, I need you to map every tunnel under that fortress. Find me a route from the surface to the geothermal core. Taemin, prepare the company for underground operations. Full stealth gear. Hana, I need demolition packs. Enough to crack a power station. Sir, Eunji said carefully. They ordered us to stay in orbit. They ordered us to protect coalition logistics. If the assault fails and thousands of soldiers die, that's a logistics problem. We'll be in position to solve it. It was thin reasoning. They all knew it. But it was enough to cover them. Barely. The next 6 hours passed quickly. Daewon watched his soldiers prepare. 120 men. And women. That was all. Against an army of 50,000 aliens. They were nothing. Against a fortress that had crushed 3 coalition assaults, they were less than nothing. But Daewon had learned something in those corporate tunnels under Earth's cities. Numbers didn't always matter. Sometimes a small force in the right place could change everything. He stood at the window and watched the alien fleet prepare for deployment. Massive ships carrying thousands of warriors. He saw Krathari, assault craft. Volnari, heavy cruisers. Herxian drop pods that would slam into the ground like meteors. It was overwhelming force. It was exactly what the Vrith expected. Daewon smiled. It was not a happy smile. Lieutenant Hana, he said, get the company to the dropships. We're going down to the surface. Sir, we haven't been authorized. I don't need authorization. I need initiative. Let's show these aliens what humans do when everyone ignores us. Hana saluted. Her smile matched his. The enemy was about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Ignoring them was always a mistake. The assault began at dawn. Daewon watched from orbit through his command display. 50,000 coalition warriors dropped from the sky like rain. Their ships were bright streaks of fire across the dark atmosphere of Kethris 7. Beautiful, Sergeant Taemin said, but his voice was sad. He knew what was coming. The Krathari landed first. 8,000 of them, each one carrying energy shields and plasma weapons. They formed perfect lines and marched toward the fortress gates. Their shields glowed bright blue in the morning light. Then the Herxian berserkers followed. 4 armed giants who roared battle cries as they charged. Behind them came the Volnari commandos, moving in tight formations, their silicon bodies reflecting the sun like living crystals. It was the largest force the coalition had ever assembled. Daewon had to admit it was impressive. 50,000 of the galaxy's finest warriors, billions of credits worth of weapons and armor, ships that could crack planets. Contact in 30 seconds, Eunji reported from her station. Daewon counted down silently. 20 seconds. 10. 5. The fortress opened fire. Energy beams cut through the sky. They were thick as trees and bright as suns. The first wave hit the Krathari lines. Shields exploded. Bodies burned. In 3 seconds, 1,000 warriors died. Dampening fields, Daewon said quietly. They're neutralizing the shields. Hana looked at him. You knew? I suspected. The Vreth aren't stupid. They've fought the coalition before. They know how to counter their tactics. On the display, chaos erupted. The Krathari tried to advance but walked into carefully prepared kill zones. Automated turrets rose from the ground and tore through their ranks. The Herxian berserkers charged the gates and ran straight into energy mines. Hundreds died in seconds. The Volnari tried a flanking maneuver. They were cut down by hidden artillery positions. 3 hours into the battle, The coalition had lost 15,000 soldiers. They hadn't even reached the fortress walls. Daewon's communication panel lit up. Commander Thex Ral appeared on screen. His shell was cracked. One of his arms hung uselessly at his side. Behind him, Daewon could see wounded soldiers and burning equipment. "Human," Thex Ral said. His voice was strained. "We require medical supplies and ammunition. Bring them to Landing Zone 7. Commander, if you'd let me explain my plan." "I do not need your plans. I need supplies. That is an order." The screen went dark. Hana cursed. "He's going to keep throwing soldiers at that fortress until they're all dead." "Yes," Daewon said. He turned to his officers. "How long until we're ready?" 2 hours, Taemin reported. "The route through the lava tubes is mapped. We have the equipment loaded." 1 hour and 40 minutes, Yoonji added. "I've created a communications blackout protocol. Once we activate it, coalition sensors won't be able to track us." Daewon nodded. "Load the dropships. We're going in." "Sir," Jae-ho said carefully, "we haven't been authorized. If we deploy without orders, then I'll face a tribunal when this is over." Daewon interrupted. "But I'd rather face a tribunal than watch 50,000 soldiers die, because their commanders are too proud to listen." The human company moved quickly. They'd trained for this. Drop ships designed for stealth, not heavy assault. Suits that masked their thermal signatures. Weapons optimized for close combat in tight spaces. Everything the coalition thought was primitive. Everything they thought was useless. Daewon strapped into his seat and felt the dropship shudder as it launched. Through the small window, he could see the battle below. The fortress was a dark mass surrounded by fire and death. Thousands of bodies littered the ground. The coalition was losing badly. "Approaching insertion point," the pilot announced. "Volcanic region. Lot of heat signatures. Perfect for hiding." The dropship dove low, skimming over a river of lava. The heat was intense even through the hull. They landed on a rocky outcrop, 15 kilometers from the fortress. "Move out," Daewon ordered. 120 soldiers emerged into the harsh landscape. The air was hot and smelled of sulfur. Black rock stretched in every direction. In the distance, they could hear the thunder of artillery. Taemin led them to the lava tube entrance. It was a crack in the ground, barely 3 feet wide. Hot air rushed out of it like breath from a dragon. "Down there?" one soldier asked. He sounded nervous. "Down there," Daewon confirmed. "Single file. Watch your footing. The rock is unstable." They descended into darkness. Emergency lights on their suits cast red shadows on the walls. The passage was narrow. When their new passage was narrow, sometimes they had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Sometimes they had to crawl. Any of the larger alien species would have been stuck immediately. A Krathari's shell was too wide. A Herxian's bulk too great. Even a Volnari would struggle in these tight spaces. But humans fit perfectly. They moved through the tunnels for 3 hours. The heat was crushing. Sweat poured down Daewon's face inside his helmet. His shoulders ached from crawling. His knees were bruised from the rough stone. But he kept moving. They all did. That was another thing the aliens didn't understand. Humans were stubborn. They didn't quit just because something was hard. They'd evolved climbing mountains and crossing deserts. They'd survived ice ages and plagues. A hot tunnel wasn't going to stop them. "Sir," Unji's voice crackled in his ear. "I'm picking up structure ahead. We're under the fortress." Daewon checked his scanner. She was right. Above them, through hundreds of feet of rock, was the fortress's lower level. "Find me an access point," he ordered. It took 30 minutes. They found a maintenance shaft that connected the lava tubes to the fortress's geothermal cooling system. It was locked, with Vreth security codes. Yoonji smiled. "Their mistake," she said. "Vreth encryption is good, but I'm better." She worked for 10 minutes while the rest of the company set up a defensive perimeter. Daewon watched his soldiers check their weapons. They were quiet, focused. They knew what was coming. "Got it," Yoonji announced. The shaft door hissed open. Beyond was a vertical tunnel leading up into the fortress. Emergency lights flickered along the walls. "Once we go up," Daewon said, "there's no going back. They'll know we're here. We'll be fighting against thousands of Vreth in their own fortress. Some of us won't make it home." He looked at his soldiers. Every face was calm, determined. "But we're going to do something none of those aliens up there could do. We're going to win this battle. Not with strength, not with superior technology, but with guts and stubbornness, and by being too damn stubborn to know when to quit. That's the human way." "Sir," Hana said. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted. Let's go kill some bugs." The soldiers laughed. It was dark humor. The kind soldiers share before battle. Then, they climbed up into the fortress, and the killing began. The first Vreth guard died without making a sound. Taemin's knife was quick and silent. The insectoid creature dropped to the floor, its 6 legs twitching once before going still. They were in a maintenance corridor deep in the fortress. The walls were organic, like everything the Vreth built. They pulsed with a faint rhythm that matched a heartbeat. It was disturbing, but useful. The sound covered the footsteps of Daewon's soldiers. "Clear," Taemin whispered into the radio. The company moved forward in teams of 6. They'd practiced this 1,000 times. Urban combat, tunnel fighting, close quarters battle. The coalition thought these skills were outdated. They preferred long-range weapons and energy shields and massive assaults. But down here in the dark, none of that mattered. "Movement ahead," Jaeho reported. 20 Vreth. Patrol pattern. Daewon checked his tactical display. The patrol was moving toward them. In 30 seconds, they'd walk right into the human position. "Ambush formation," he ordered. Silent takedown. His soldiers melted into the shadows. The corridor had alcoves and maintenance panels. Perfect hiding spots for human-sized fighters. The Vreth were larger, built for open spaces. The patrol approached. Daewon could hear their clicking communication. It sounded like insects, which made sense. That's what they were. Giant insects with weapons and intelligence. The patrol leader passed Daewon's position. He stepped out behind it and fired his weapon. A pulse of energy at close range. The Vreth dropped. Around him, 19 more shots cracked in the darkness. 19 more Vreth fell. "Drag the bodies into the side rooms," Daewon ordered. "We don't want anyone finding them too soon." They moved deeper into the fortress. The corridors grew wider. They encountered more patrols. Each time, they set ambushes. Each time, they won without raising an alarm. "This is too easy," Hana muttered. Daewon nodded. "They're not expecting us. The Vreth know the coalition always attacks from the front. They've never had to defend their lower levels. That's going to change soon." "Yes, when it does, things will get ugly." They reached a junction where the corridor opened into a larger chamber. Eunji checked her scanner and swore. "Problem?" Daewon asked. "The geothermal core is 3 levels up. But to get there, we have to go through that." She pointed at her display. The chamber was a barracks. Hundreds of Vreth soldiers were stationed there. It was a major assembly point, probably for troops rotating to the front lines. "Can we go around?" Taemin asked. "Not without adding 6 hours to our route. By then, the coalition assault will have completely failed." Daewon studied the chamber layout. It was large and open, not ideal for human tactics. But there was something interesting about the design. "Their barracks has a central support column," he said. "Looks like it carries power and ventilation for this entire section." Hana saw where he was going. "If we collapsed it, chaos, darkness, confusion. While they're trying to figure out what happened, we slip through." "That's insane," Jaeho said. There are hundreds of them. Yes. But they won't be able to see us. And in the dark, humans hunt very well. It took 20 minutes to set the charges. Hana's team placed them precisely around the support column. Not enough to bring down the whole chamber. Just enough to cripple it. Everyone ready? Daewon asked. He received confirmations from all squad leaders. Blow it. The explosion was massive in the enclosed space. The support column cracked and twisted. Power lines snapped, throwing sparks. The lights died. Emergency systems kicked in, but they were dim and flickering. In the darkness, hundreds of Vreth panicked. Go, Daewon ordered. His soldiers poured into the chamber. They moved by instinct and training, following the paths they'd memorized on their displays. They had night vision. The Vreth relied on natural light and their compound eyes. In the dark, the Vreth were blind. The humans were not. They cut through the chamber like shadows. When Vreth soldiers stumbled into them, they died quickly. Knives were better than guns now. Quieter. The Vreth were screaming and clicking and firing wildly. Most of their shots hit their own soldiers. Daewon led his team across the chamber. A Vreth warrior loomed out of the darkness, mandibles clicking. Daewon shot it twice in the head and kept moving. Another appeared. Taemin tackled it and drove his knife through its thorax. They reached the far exit in 3 minutes. Behind them, the chamber was chaos. The Vreth still hadn't figured out what was happening. Head count, Daewon ordered once they were in the next corridor. We lost 2, Taemin reported. Park and Subin, caught by crossfire. Daewon felt the familiar weight of command. 2 dead, but 118 still alive. In any other military, losing soldiers would be considered failure, but humans had learned to accept casualties. It was part of war. The aliens didn't understand this either. They tried to minimize deaths because each of their warriors was valuable. Humans understood that sometimes sacrifice was necessary. They climbed higher into the fortress. The corridors were more defended now. They couldn't use stealth anymore. The Vreth knew intruders were inside. Contact front, a soldier called out. A squad of Vreth came around the corner. Both sides opened fire. Energy weapons lit up the corridor. Daewon's soldiers took cover behind support pillars. The Vreth tried to advance, but human firepower pushed them back. Grenades, Daewon ordered. 3 grenades arced through the air. They bounced off the walls and landed among the Vreth. The explosions were devastating in the narrow space. They pushed forward over the bodies. Level by level, they fought their way up. The combat was brutal. Close range. No room for mistakes. But the humans had advantages. They were smaller, more flexible. They could use cover, the Vreth couldn't. They worked as teams, covering each other. Moving like they were one organism, the Vreth fought as individuals. Each warrior tried to prove its strength. It made them predictable. We're approaching the core chamber, Yunji reported. Heavy defenses ahead. Daewon checked his ammunition. Running low. Everyone was. They'd been fighting for hours. How many of us are left? He asked. 76, Taemin said. His voice was tired. 44 soldiers lost, almost half the company. But they were still moving forward. Still fighting. That was the human way. You didn't stop until the mission was complete, or you were dead. The core chamber has one main entrance. Unji continued. It's defended by at least 100 Vreth. Heavy weapons, energy barriers, and no way around? No way that won't take hours. Daewon looked at Lieutenant Hana. She was covered in dust and blood. Some of it was hers. But she was still standing. I need 15 minutes in that core chamber, he said. Can you get me there? Hana smiled. It was a terrible smile. I can get you there. But holding the entrance long enough for you to work? That's going to cost. I know. You're asking me to hold a choke point against 100 enemies with maybe 20 soldiers. Yes, she nodded slowly. Then we better make it count. Let's go remind these bugs why humans are the scariest thing in the galaxy. End quote. Run. End quote. End quote. These next. The corridor leading to the core chamber was wide and straight. Perfect killing ground. The Vreth had set up barricades and heavy weapons. Energy barriers shimmered across the passage. Lieutenant Hanna studied the defenses with cold eyes. They built this to stop an army. Good thing we're not an army, Taman said. We're just crazy humans. Hanna turned to her squad. 20 soldiers. They looked tired. Their armor was scorched and dented, but their eyes were hard. Ready. You all know what this is, she said quietly. Someone has to hold this corridor. Someone has to keep those bugs off the captain's back while he destroys their power core. That someone is us. How long do we need to hold? One soldier asked. 15 minutes. And after that? Hanna didn't answer. She didn't need to. They all understood. After 15 minutes, it wouldn't matter anymore. Either the fortress would be dead, or they would be. For Earth, she said simply. For Earth, they replied. Day One gripped her shoulder. Thank me by winning this war, sir. Make my death worth something. Then she turned and led her squad down the corridor. They moved fast, staying low. The Vreth opened fire immediately. Energy beams cut through the air. One soldier fell, then another, but Hanna's squad reached the barricades. They used grenades in close combat. The Vreth were strong, but humans were vicious. Hand to hand, knife to mandible. Brutal and desperate. They broke through the first barricade, then the second. Go now. Hanna's voice crackled over the radio. We've got your entrance. Day One ran with the remaining soldiers. They sprinted past Hanna's position. She was reloading her weapon. Blood ran down her face. Behind her, the corridor was full of bodies. Human and Vreth mixed together. The core chamber door was open. Day One and 30 soldiers poured through. Behind them, they heard Hanna shout orders. Then the sound of weapons fire. The core chamber was huge. In the center was the geothermal regulator. It was massive, 3 stories tall, pulsing with energy. Conduits ran from it in every direction. This single machine powered the entire fortress. Set the charges, Day One ordered. Unji, I need you to override the safety systems. I want this thing to overload. That will cause a chain reaction, she said. I know. It could destroy half the fortress. I'm counting on it. His soldiers moved quickly. They placed charges on critical points. Hanna had taught them exactly where to put them. She'd studied the fortress designs for days. This was her plan. Her sacrifice. Outside, the sound of battle was intense. Hanna's squad was holding, but barely. Captain, her voice came through the radio. It was strained. You need to hurry. We're down to 12. 5 more minutes. We might not have 5 minutes. Day One worked faster. His hands moved automatically, setting timers and connecting detonators. Around him, his soldiers did the same. Contact, someone shouted. Vreth warriors were coming through side entrances. The core chamber had multiple access points. Day One's soldiers formed a perimeter and opened fire. Keep them back, he ordered. Just a few more minutes. The chamber became a battleground. Humans and Vreth fought among the machinery. Energy beams reflected off metal surfaces. Explosions echoed in the huge space. Day One finished the last charge. Unji, status? Safety systems are down. When these charges blow, the regulator will overload. The cascade will reach every power conduit in the fortress. How long until complete failure? 90 seconds after detonation. Set the timer for 2 minutes. Everyone fall back to the corridor. His soldiers retreated fighting. They left behind 6 more bodies. The Vreth pressed forward, but human firepower kept them at distance. Day One reached the corridor. Hanna's position was desperate. Only 8 of her soldiers still stood. They were behind makeshift barricades, made of bodies and debris. The floor was slick with blood. Hana was firing methodically. Each shot dropped a breath. But for every one that fell, 2 more appeared. "Lieutenant," Day One called. "Charges are set." "You evacuate, sir. We'll hold them off." "That's an order, Lieutenant." "Fall back." "With respect, sir, you're not in command anymore." "I am. And I'm ordering my squad to hold this position." Day One felt something break inside him. "Hana, finish it, Captain. That's an order from a dead woman. Make this mean something." The timer showed 90 seconds. Day One ran. He hated himself for it, but he ran. His remaining soldiers followed. Behind them, he heard Hana and her squad still firing. Still fighting. Still holding. 60 seconds. They reached a stairwell and climbed. The fortress was built vertically. They needed to get above the blast zone. 30 seconds. Day One activated the emergency channel. "All coalition forces, pull back 2 kilometers. Repeat, pull back 2 kilometers. Immediate danger to, what have you done, human?" Commander Thexral's voice cut through. "Won your war, Commander." 10 seconds. Day One and his soldiers burst out onto the fortress walls. Outside, the coalition forces were retreating in confusion. Thousands of wounded aliens limped away from the fortress. 5 seconds. "Everyone down!" Day One shouted. The explosion came from deep inside the fortress. It wasn't loud. Just a deep thump that shook the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights went out. Every light in the fortress died at once. The shields flickered and vanished. Weapon systems sparked and went dark. The fortress that had seemed invincible suddenly became a tomb. The Vreth inside began to scream. Secondary explosions rippled through the structure. Power conduits overloaded. Life support failed. Toxic gases vented from emergency ports. The fortress was eating itself alive. Vreth warriors poured out of every exit, fleeing the dying structure. Coalition forces, shocked into action, began cutting them down. Without shields or heavy weapons, the Vreth were helpless. In 10 minutes, it was over. The fortress that had stopped 3 coalition assaults was a burning ruin. Day One sat on the wall and watched it burn. His radio crackled with coalition chatter. Thexral was calling for reports. Other commanders were demanding to know what happened. He ignored them all. "Head count," he said to Taemin. 62, sir. Including you and me. 62 out of 120. Half the company lost. Hana, Park, Subin. 44 others whose names would be added to the memorial wall back on Earth. "Extract the survivors," Day One ordered. "Get them back to the ship." "What about you, sir?" "I'm going to sit here for a while. I need to watch it burn. I need to remember what it cost." Taemin saluted and left him alone. Day One sat on the fortress wall and thought about Lieutenant Hana. She'd been 28 years old. She'd joined the military to see the stars. She'd wanted to explore the galaxy. Instead, she died in a dark corridor, fighting bugs. But her death had meaning. 50,000 coalition soldiers were alive because of her, because of all the humans who died today. The galaxy would remember this. They'd remember that humans could do what no other species could. They'd remember that the small, weak species from Earth had won a battle everyone else had lost. And maybe, just maybe, they'd stop underestimating humanity. Or maybe they'd just fear them instead. The tribunal chamber was cold and formal. Day One stood in the center of a circular room while 5 alien judges sat above him on raised platforms. They looked down at him like gods judging a mortal. Commander Thexral was there too. His shell had been repaired, but he still moved stiffly. One arm was in a medical support. He'd nearly died in the assault. Most of his command staff had died, but he was alive. 50,000 coalition soldiers were alive. Because of what Day One had done. "Captain Day One," the lead judge said. She was a Volnari, her crystalline body reflecting the chamber lights. "You are charged with unauthorized military action, violation of command structure, and reckless endangerment of coalition forces. How do you plead? I don't recognize these charges, Day One said calmly. Thexral's mandibles clicked in anger. You disobeyed direct orders. You took your forces into combat without authorization. You endangered the entire operation. I saved the entire operation, Day One corrected. Your assault had failed. 15,000 soldiers were dead. Another 20,000 would have died if the battle continued. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. That was not your decision to make, the Volnari judge said. Then whose decision was it? Commander Thexral refused to listen to my tactical assessment. He refused to consider alternative strategies. He was so certain of his superiority that he marched his soldiers into a massacre. Someone had to act. You are human, another judge said. He was a Krathari, older than Thexral, with scars across his shell. You have been in space for less than a century. What makes you think you understand warfare better than species who have fought for thousands of years? Day One smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Results. I understand warfare better because I won. Your assault failed. Mine succeeded. That's all that matters. Private Yunji, the Volnari judge called. Present your evidence. Yunji stepped forward. She looked tiny in the massive chamber, but her voice was steady. She activated a holographic display that showed the entire battle. From the initial assault to the final explosion, the judges watched in silence. They saw the coalition assault fail. They saw the casualties mount. They saw Day One's warning to Thexral. They saw it ignored. Then they saw what the humans did. The infiltration through the lava tubes. The fight through the fortress. The sacrifice at the core chamber. The explosion that ended the battle. Captain Day One identified the correct strategy before the assault began, Unji said. He warned Commander Thexral. He was ignored. When the assault failed, he took action to prevent greater loss of life. Every tactical decision he made was correct. Every warning he gave was accurate. The recording ended. The chamber was quiet. You used untested tactics, Thexral said. His voice was defensive. You risked everything on an insane plan. I used human tactics, Day One replied. Tactics that work. Tactics that we've developed over thousands of years of warfare on our own planet. Earth taught us things you've never learned. That size doesn't matter. That strength isn't everything. That sometimes the best way to win is to do what your enemy thinks is impossible. You lost half your force, the Krathari judge pointed out. Yes. War has a cost. That's something else humans understand. We're willing to pay the price for victory. Are you? 1. That struck home. Day One could see it in their faces. The coalition species had become soft. They had superior technology and physical advantages. They'd forgotten what real war looked like. They'd forgotten about sacrifice. Humans remembered. The judges deliberated for 2 hours. Day One sat in a waiting room with Taemin and Unji. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. Finally, they were called back. Captain Day One, the Volnari judge said. After reviewing the evidence, we find you not guilty of all charges. Your actions, while unconventional, prevented a catastrophic defeat. The coalition owes you a debt. Day One waited. He could hear the "but" coming. However, the judge continued, we cannot have human forces operating independently. It sets a dangerous precedent. Therefore, we are issuing a new directive. All human military units will remain in support roles. No independent combat operations will be authorized. There it was. They couldn't admit that humans had succeeded where they failed. It would destroy the hierarchy of the coalition. It would mean admitting that the newest, weakest species was better at war than ancient civilizations. So instead, they caged humanity. I understand, Day One said. His voice was flat. You are dismissed, Captain. Day One saluted and left the chamber. Outside, Taemin was furious. They're idiots. We save their lives and they reward us by pushing us back into the corner. They're afraid, Yunji said quietly. What do we do now? Taemin asked. We follow orders, Day-1 said. For now. But we also prepare. Because this isn't over. 3 days later, Day-1 received a message from Earth Command. It was brief and encrypted. 17 additional support units are being deployed to critical sectors, all commanded by officers with your background and experience. Stand by for further orders. Day-1 smiled as he deleted the message. The coalition had made a choice. They wanted human support. They wanted human resources. But they didn't want humans fighting. They'd learn, eventually. On the other side of the war, the Vreth were learning too. Day-1 had seen the intelligence reports. Captured Vreth communications showed something interesting. Fear. The Vreth called humans the small ones who do not stop. They'd issued warnings across their entire military. The humans are relentless. That word kept appearing. Relentless. Day-1 met with the Earth Coalition ambassador a week later. Ambassador Kim was in her 60s, a sharp woman who'd negotiated humanity's entry into the coalition. They're trying to sideline us again, she said without preamble. I know. What do you recommend, Captain? Day-1 looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were being told to stay back, to let the real warriors handle the fighting, to accept their place as the junior species. Don't ask for their respect, he said. Make them need us. Put human forces in every critical sector, not as support, as specialists, tunnel fighters, infiltration experts, the soldiers who do the jobs no one else can do. And when they try to stop us, they won't. Not after Kethris 7. They know what we're capable of now. They're scared of us, so they'll try to control us instead. 10. Will it work? No. Because every time there's a battle that the coalition can't win, they'll call us. And every time, we'll show them what humans can do. Eventually, they'll realize they need us. Not as support, as equals. And if they never realize it, Day-1 smiled. It was a cold smile. Then, we remind them. The same way we reminded the Vreth. By doing the impossible. By winning battles they think can't be won. By being so valuable, they can't afford to ignore us. Ambassador Kim nodded slowly. They made a mistake. 2 mistakes, Day-1 corrected. First, they underestimated us. Second, they let us fight. Now we've shown what we can do. They can try to cage us, try to control us, try to keep us in support roles. But when the next battle comes, when the next fortress needs to fall, they'll call us. And we'll answer, yes. Because that's what humans do. We fight, we win, and we never, ever quit. Far across the galaxy, in 17 different sectors, human units were deploying. Small companies, less than 200 soldiers each. The coalition barely noticed them, but the Vreth noticed. They issued more warnings, changed their tactics, reinforced positions they'd previously thought secure. They'd learned to fear the small species from Earth. Soon, the coalition would learn to respect them, and if respect didn't come, then fear would do just fine. Day-1 returned to his quarters and looked at the memorial wall. 60 names from Kethris 7. Hana's name was first. He touched it gently. We won, he told her. Not just the battle. The war. The real war. The one where humanity proves it belongs. You started that, Hana. Your sacrifice meant something. It meant everything. It meant everything. In the darkness of his room, Day-1 made a promise. To Hana. They would never be ignored again. The enemy had made that mistake once. It would be their last.